Christy, after we play this, he's going to want on the pull up a black screen. So he said just go ahead and click all clear.
Okay.
And that'll make it black.
Okay. I've never done that before, but I'm sure that'll work.
Then I can just jump up.
Right, yeah.
All right, good morning. Let me go ahead and come on in from the hallway. We're going to do something a little special this morning. My special, I'm going to collect your hands.
to go to Spring Hill last weekend. We took 23 4th through 6th graders. I take that back. We took a couple of 7th graders because they begged me every year, can I still go to Spring Hill? And we have a blast, and it's amazing. And Spring Hill is tons of fun. But the awesome thing about Spring Hill is it gives us this opportunity as leaders to speak into their lives on kind of a bigger level. You guys can all have a seat, sorry. So we get an opportunity to have some one-on-one time with these kids. We get to have small group time. We get to build relationships between us leaders and kids, and these kids get to see what a community of believers looks like. They get to see what it looks like to lean on other people when they need to. And I brought 2 kids that went to camp with us, and they're going to tell you a little bit about first what they learned, and second what was super fun. So first you have to tell me what your name is.
Maya.
What did you learn about God at camp?
I learned about that
Just wait till I ask her the next question. She'll remember what was fun about camp. So we got to listen to this skit, and we got to watch this skit. And the skit was about a family who went through some pretty big struggles. Does that jog your memory at all?
Something I learned about God was that even though you're having a hard time, He can use bad things to do good.
That's right. And what was the most fun you had at camp?
Session and worship.
So we had 4 sessions over there. Friday night they have a big huge worship session and then a speaker, and then Saturday they have 2, and then Sunday they have 1. And a lot of the kids, it kind of surprises me because we get to do paintball and horseback riding and all these crazy things. And so often I ask them, what's your favorite part about camp? And they're like, it was worship. And I'm like, that's awesome. All right, what's your name?
Josiah.
And what did you learn at camp?
When bad things happen, that a good thing can happen through that.
So there was this guy that they helped. What was his name?
Max.
And this family, inside of all their troubles, how did they get to help Max?
They let him live in their house.
That's right, they took him in as family after all of it was done. All right, Josiah, what was your most fun thing about camp?
Free time.
Why free time?
Because we could do anything we wanted.
They get a lot of free time too. It's tons of fun. So we're going to bring a little bit of camp to Connections this morning, and we're going to play a super fun game. So right now I need everybody in the room to pretend that you're in 4th, 5th, or 6th grade. Can you all do that for me? Okay. So Josiah's going to pick someone, and Maya's going to pick someone, and I need all of you to root as loud as you can for whoever your favorite is up here. And they're going to pick one person. Guys, go ahead and pick one person while I'm talking. And we're going to play a game that they got to play at camp. Yes! All right, I'm going to get out of the way. All right, get your toilet paper ready. So you guys have 60 seconds to wrap your person in toilet paper. And then we're going to vote and see who wins. All right, ready? Yes. Ready, set, go. All right, everybody cheer for him. I don't hear any cheering anymore.
You know, place. Faster.
All right, everybody count down with me. 30, 29, 28, 27, 26, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, put down your toilet paper. All right, don't move. We're going to vote. Who thinks
you've just received, I'm Dave, and I'm delighted that you're here with us this morning. We're going to kind of do a very rapid gear shift. You know how that happens in life? Where you're kind of going one way with one set of emotions, and then suddenly something happens, and you're entering a totally different direction. We're going to do that for just a second here right now, because as I'm sure all of you probably know, 1 week ago today, there was yet another horrific tragedy in our country. If you were like me, you made your way home after church on Sunday. Eventually you flip on the news, or maybe you listen to the radio on the way home. What do we hear about? We hear about a church shooting where 26 people lost their lives while gathering to worship God. And if you're like me, you were stunned at the news. Yet another one in here in church. And it's a reminder, of course, that evil in the world is real. The famed political dissident and philosopher Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that he learned while imprisoned in a gulag that evil did not cut its way through governments or countries, but it cut its way through every human heart. And some side with good, and others have a bent toward evil. And we are reminded yet again that evil exists in our world. Let us also be reminded that the remedy for evil is the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the power of God to salvation, to rescue for every single person. And it is what we do that is the most critical element of combating evil in the world. We share the good news about Jesus and the rescue and life that is in him. But while we're doing that, we need to be responsible. And we understand that in our times and in our culture, as a church, there are additional steps that we need to make to help ensure our security as we gather week in and week out. So I wanted to let you know a couple of things. We've got some procedures that have kicked in this morning. For instance, even right now, all the doors into this building are locked. Now we have people standing, waiting, so that if someone comes late, you can still get in. But the doors are locked because most of these atrocious acts happen with someone entering the building after things have gotten going. So that's just one simple step I want to make you aware of. I want you to know that we have met as a board of elders, and we are putting together enhanced security protocols for our church. I will have meetings this week where we'll be ratifying and finalizing some of that stuff, and I'll have other procedures that I'll be talking to you about in the weeks to come. Because we want Connections to be a safe place in every way. Safe for the weary, struggling, confused heart that is looking for answers, strength, and direction. That is looking for love and acceptance right where they're at. We want to be a safe place spiritually, relationally, and emotionally. And we want to do our best to make sure that we're a safe place physically as well. So know that we are taking additional steps. You'll be hearing more about them as the future unfolds. Now, because the gospel, because Jesus is still the remedy for evil in the world, let us redouble our efforts to grow in Christ and to share the good news about him. We're going to continue worshiping this morning as our band comes back up on stage. And as we do, let's make sure that we're not worshiping out of fear, but rather we are confident that our God is not only watching out for us, but that our God is using us to help spread his love and kingdom in the world. All right? So let's stand and continue to worship.
Build your kingdom here. Let the darkness fear. Show your mighty hand. Heal our streets and land. Set your church on fire. Win this nation back. Change the atmosphere. Build your kingdom here. We pray. Come set your rule and reign in our hearts again. Increase in us, we pray. Unveil our reign. Come set our hearts ablaze with hope. Show your mighty hand, heal our streets and land. where feet may fail. And there I find you in the mystery, an ocean deep, my faith stands. I will call upon your name, keep my eyes above the waves.
this up. We empty ourselves before you. And Lord, we know that this world is full of tragedy and full of evil, but you have conquered all. You have already won the day. It's in that salvation that we can praise you. It's in that we can sing this out and have confidence that you are Lord. You are supreme. You are sovereign. Lord, we sing this out and we give you all our praise because you are worthy. In the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Have a seat. If there's one word that embodies the journey that we're on here at Connections, it's the word respond. In fact, that's our bracelets have the saying #respond on them, that they're available if you haven't got one out in the lobby. And that word embodies our sermon series, and what we're trying to learn as a group of God's people here at Connections is how we respond to what God has called us to do. This time of offering that we're about to take is a time of responding to God. Worship is responding to the truth of who God is. And as the giver of life, the giver of good gifts, we respond by giving him a portion of our finances. So at this time, I'm going to ask the ushers to come forward. And if this is your first time here with us at Connections, or if you're a visitor, we want you to consider this service a gift to you. You can let that basket pass you by. Don't feel like you have to put anything in. This is a time for us as a group of God's people to respond to what God is doing in and through us. But we also would like, if you see the orange card right in front of the seat in front of you, if you would take a moment to fill that out and either drop it in the basket or bring it to the Welcome Center. It'll give us a record of your visit, give us an opportunity to pray for you, and we also have a gift for you at the back. So ushers, you can begin to pass the baskets, and we'll take a look at what's happening here at Connections.
Hi, I'm Kristen, and you're watching this week's edition of Connections News, where the only thing fake about it is my hair color. Every year we take a special Thanksgiving offering that goes toward a specific project. This year, our Thanksgiving offering will go toward helping our ministry partners in Uganda, Messengers of Grace. The church and school educate and feed over 500 children and is in need of serious expansion and updating. This offering will be taken on the weekend before and after Thanksgiving. Please consider how you can help in this worthy project. There's only 43 days until Christmas, and this is the last call for anyone who plays any kind of musical instrument to be a part of our Christmas Eve services. Steve has something really big planned, and he wants you to be a part of it. So if you're interested in being involved in the best Christmas ever, come see Steve after the service or email him at the email below. If you're looking for a great way to meet people and build stronger friendships at Connections, then join us on Thursday nights for community groups. Meet in the lobby at 6 o'clock where we'll hang out and have some snacks, and then we'll move into the auditorium to watch a video and break into small groups for discussion. If you have any questions, email Steve Serene at the email below. Do you like scavenger hunts? Do you like hanging out with people? Then you will be thrilled because Thanksgiving Quest is back. Join us Saturday night, November 18th from 7 to 9 p.m. as we set off on a photo scavenger quest, all while blessing our local community with random acts of kindness. This event is for all ages, consisting of teams of 4 to 8 people. Each team must have one participant over 18 years old, one car, and one smartphone. Sign up today at the Welcome Center. Attention runners, would you like to meet up with other people from Connections for a run this fall? Then join us at Celery Flats this Saturday, November 18th at 8 a.m. Everyone is welcome, and there will be courses of multiple distances planned. If you're interested or need more information, email Steve Serene at the email below. We're having a baptism service on Sunday, December 3rd. This will be our first ever baptism in our new building. If you are interested in being baptized or have questions about it, please tap on the sign up icon on our church app or go to the Next Steps tab on the church website and click on baptism. Space is limited, so please register soon. Thanks for watching. That's all we have for today, and please stay connected with us throughout the week via our website and our Facebook page. Enjoy the rest of your service.
Well, this is a picture of a very remote, very quaint, and very beautiful city in Bolivia, Coroico. Now, the interesting thing about this particular city is not so much the city itself, but how you get there, particularly if you're in La Paz, which is the capital of Bolivia. There's a highway that you take. It's called Old Yungas Highway. But it really goes by a different name, and that is Death Road. It has been labeled as the most dangerous road in the world. It was carved into the cliffside by inmates who appeared to have an agenda. Look at that road. It is estimated that between 200 and 300 people die every year on this road. When a vehicle goes off the side, it would take a day for emergency people to even get there. And the interesting thing, it's a one-lane road but has two-way traffic. The rule is that those going up have the right of way over those going down. And so when they meet, those going down back up until there's a spot wide enough that the other vehicle can squeeze by. And even though in Bolivia, you drive on the right side of the road, on this one you drive on the left side of the road. So the people going down can see how close their wheels are to the edge of the cliff as they pass another vehicle. And oh, by the way, when it rains, many sections of the road become waterfalls. And it gets slippery because it's often not paved. It's a gravel road. There are washouts. There are rock slides. And bicyclists think this is one of the cool roads to bike on. And there's a group of them on their way down right there. I have a question for you. Would you drive on this road? Now, some of you thrill seekers are like, yes! But most of us are going, there is no way I am going to drive on that road. Okay, but let me change the equation just a little bit. What if at the end of that road was the one thing you wanted more than anything else in life? Whatever it is, the thing you want more than anything. At the end of that road, it would be waiting for you if you got there. If that were the occasion, would you travel that road? This is kind of what Jesus had in mind when he offered these words. He said, wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate. That means it's hard to get onto the road. And narrow is the road. That means it's confining, difficult, and dangerous. Narrow is the gate, or I should say small is the gate and narrow is the road that leads to life. But only a few find it. Jesus is saying that the thing you ultimately desire most in life, the thing behind the thing that you thought of when you thought, what is that one thing that would make it so I would travel that road? This is what Jesus says awaits for those who can find that road and have the courage to walk it. And you know what's interesting about that? Jesus said, he was the road. He said, I am the way, I am the truth, and no one comes to the Father except through me. I am the way, Jesus said. I am the path. I am the road. And it's in following Jesus that we find the life all of us crave and the life for which we were ultimately destined. We're in a series here at Connections simply called Follow Me. When Jesus was on earth, he was always issuing this invitation, and those who accepted it found everything changed in their lives. And Jesus still offers that invitation today to every single one of us. He says, come follow me. And what we're doing is we're trying to understand this invitation in a deeper way. We want to understand, how does that apply to us today, in our time, and in our culture? Maybe a little review would be helpful. Some of the highlights we've discussed so far. First is that the invitation to follow Jesus means he believes you can be like him. and that you can carry on his cause in the world. We learned that the people who uttered the invitation, "Follow me," in Jesus' day were only individuals known as great ones who had a disproportional influence on the shaping of the world and the community. And they would only ask people to follow them if they believed that person had what it took to be a world changer. And when Jesus says, "Follow me," it demonstrates what he believes about you. Second, we discover that following Jesus means responding to his Spirit when he prompts us to act. You see, when we believe on Jesus, the Spirit of Jesus comes to dwell within us. And the Spirit of Jesus will prompt us to emulate his example, to live out his values, to obey his teachings. And when the Spirit of Jesus prompts us to act in such a way, a follower of Jesus just responds. It's why we've challenged everyone to get the #Respond bracelets that are available at the Welcome Center in the back as a reminder that when the Spirit of God prompts me to obey Jesus, to live out the values of Jesus, to emulate the example of Jesus, my responsibility as a follower is just to obey the prompting. We learned a couple of weeks ago that anyone can follow. This is not for a select few. It doesn't matter whether you are religiously inclined or whether you're an average Jane or Joe or whether or not you're a big-time sinner. Jesus offered the invitation, "Follow me," to all three categories. It's open to all. Last week we learned that following Jesus means making his mission in the world your priority in life. The normal life revolves around making a living, but a follower's life revolves around building a kingdom. The normal life is all about your job and the reasons why you have one. But a follower's life is all about helping people believe in Jesus and become like Jesus. So everywhere they go, in every slice of their life, their priority is to advance the purposes of Jesus in the lives of people. Now, as we ponder these things, there's a question that I think is very normal for all of us to have. What happens to me if I follow Jesus? What happens to me? Because it sounds adventuresome, and it sounds cool, and it's got an appeal to it, but I'm going to be honest with you, it sounds a little bit risky. So what happens to me if I follow Jesus? Jesus answered that question. And here's how. On one occasion, it says he called the crowd to him along with his disciples. And he said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for my sake and the gospel will find it." I think it's fascinating that as Jesus is unveiling what great thing happens if we will follow him, that it begins by going, first of all, let me give you the requirements. See, with Jesus, there was no fine print. With Jesus, there was never any bait or switch. He was right up front about what this was and what it meant. The first requirement Jesus gave for following him is simply this. It's self-denial. A person must deny him or herself. Self-denial is the capacity to say no to yourself. To say no to yourself. Now understand that here, we are not talking about self-deprivation. See, there's this weird kind of warped version of Christianity that floats around that says God is anti-pleasure. That if you want to live a godly life, if you want to live a Jesus life, then you must forsake pleasure and you must embrace suffering. And that has worked itself out in some weird ways over the course of time. There are some people who have made contraptions that they strap onto their legs. It's like metal with barbs on it. So when they walk, it cuts their flesh and causes pain. There are others who practice what they call the discipline. The discipline is taking a short whip with knotted cords on it and beating themselves in the back. There are others who, rather than sleeping on a bed, have put boards on their bed to sleep on boards because they didn't think that being comfortable in getting a night's sleep could possibly honor God. And even though we may not go to sleep, there's this weird somehow says God is against pleasure. That somehow whatever God is, whatever Jesus is, whatever he wants for my life, it's got to involve pain and suffering. Anti-pleasure. But did you know that it is God who actually designed pleasure, and it's his desire for every human being? Look at these words found in Psalm chapter 16 and verse 11. You, God, will make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with what? Joy in your presence. With eternal what? Pleasures at your right hand. It is God's design and desire that human beings experience pleasure. Who made food taste good? God did. Who made the coming up and going out of the sun so incredibly pleasant to look at? God did. See, the question is not, does God want me to experience pleasure or not? The question is this: where is true pleasure found? Pleasure without regret or remorse. Pleasure that actually builds a sense of fulfillment inside of me as I move through the experience of life. And that comes to the essence of what self-denial actually is. See, as a concept that Jesus explained, self-denial is saying no to yourself when your thoughts, when your feelings, or when your desires are at odds with God. In other words, when what you're thinking and what God's thinking don't agree, say no to your thoughts to say yes to God's. When what you're feeling and how God feels are at odds, say no to your feelings to say yes to God's. When your desires and God's desires don't take you the same direction, say no to your desires and say yes to God's. Self-denial is simply saying no to self whenever your thoughts, your feelings, your desires are at odds with God. So, what does that mean? Well, it means things like this. When you want to go home at night and you want to put up your feet and you just want to watch TV and veg out, God, the Spirit of Jesus inside you says, you know what? It'd be a really great thing if you read the Bible and spent some time praying. I'm going to say no. It means, you know what? Rather than taking my work home with me and trying to get a little bit more, I just feel God to spend in the lives of my children. You say no to yourself to say yes to God. When it's like, I just this horrible marriage, or I think it would be so exciting if I had sex with this person that I'm not married to, and yet we know that what God says is you need to work things out in your home. We say no to our desires to say yes to God. Because it is a faith statement that God knows the path to true pleasure when we don't. The first requirement for following Jesus is self-denial. Second is personal sacrifice. He said, take up your cross and follow me. It's just my cross today. It is amazing the things I've heard in my life. I have heard a person with a handicapped child say, it's just my cross to bear. I have heard people with learning disabilities say, that's just my cross to bear. I have heard people that struggle with overeating and weight say, that's just my cross to bear. I have heard people who have an idiot spouse say, that's just my cross to bear. I have. But here's what I want us to understand. Hardships that we may face in life, complicating factors that we may encounter in life are very real and they impact us, but they are not what Jesus was referring to when he said, take up your cross. Taking up your cross means making whatever sacrifices God asks you to make in order to further his purposes in your life and in this world. That's what it means. Whatever sacrifice God asks you to make in order to advance his purposes in your life or in this world, we make the sacrifice. We give it up. We pay the price. For people like Peter and Andrew, James and John, when Jesus came and said, follow me, he was literally asking them to sacrifice their careers, their financial security, their future destiny into his hands. And they sacrificed it in order to follow him. See, there is no building the kingdom of God in the world. There is no following Jesus, serving Jesus, and building up others in this world apart from making sacrifices. But come on, everybody. Isn't that true about every noble endeavor? If you want to start a business, what does it require? Got to make a sacrifice. If you want to take your business to the next level, what does it require? It's going to take some sacrifice. Hey, if you want to raise good kids, what's it going to require? Sacrifice. If you want to overthrow oppression and tyranny in the world, what's it going to take? It's going to take sacrifice. The more noble the venture, the greater the sacrifice required. And there is no more noble venture than partnering with Jesus and following with him to build his kingdom in the world, to help seeking people believe in him and believing people to become like him. It requires sacrifice. Who do we follow again? Jesus. Does he know anything about sacrifice in a noble venture? And in a very real sense, just as he sacrificed his life to give us life, we sacrifice our lives to bring lives to others. Jesus was so clear. If you want to follow me, here's the requirements: self-denial and personal sacrifice. This is why Jesus said it is a hard road to get on, and it's a tough road to follow, because saying no to self and making personal sacrifices are never easy. But the more pressing question is, where does that road lead? See, if you will follow Jesus, you will experience true life. Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. And then listen to the words of Jesus. Here's what he says: because. Here it is. Here's the corollary. Here's the result of doing this. Whoever wants to save their life will lose it. And whoever loses their life for my sake and the gospel's will find it. He is not talking about salvation in a heaven or hell sense. He's talking about the salvation of our earthly lives. See, believing in Jesus saves us in the next life. Following Jesus saves us in this one. Believing in Jesus means we will experience heaven in the next life. And following Jesus means we can experience parts of heaven in the here and now. A life that is truly life. See, to lose one's life means to live a life that is meaningless and empty and amounts to nothing. And saving your life means living a life that is meaningful, that matters, and that deeply and eternally satisfies. That's the deal here. Saying no to self and making the sacrifices God asks is how you gain true life. It's how we live the life we crave. It's the abundant life, the life to the full that Jesus promised. And saying yes to self and refusing to sacrifice, that is how you forfeit true life. You forfeit. There's a very famous episode in the life of Jesus where he is walking down the road outside of a major metropolitan area, and there is a person who runs up to him and asks this simple question. Good teacher, what do I have to do to inherit eternal life? Now, a couple of things are really interesting there. Number one is the person making the ask. The person was young, healthy, rich, and influential. The person was moral and religious. Because when Jesus said, what about keeping the commands? He said, I've kept them all from my youth. A second interesting thing is what the man meant when he asked the question. Because he wasn't simply asking, Jesus, what do I have to do to make it to heaven when I die? His question was really, what do I have to do to experience life in the here and now? The kind of life that demonstrates I am vitally connected with God and His blessing upon me. How do I live a life that is truly life? And I love how Jesus responded. He says he looked at him and, what are the next two words? Well, understand that the words about to come out of the mouth of Jesus were prompted by a deep-seated love for this man. One thing you lack, he said. Go. Sell everything you have and give it to the poor, and then you'll have treasure in heaven. And then, come, follow me. There it is. Be willing to say no to yourself. Be willing to make the sacrifice I am asking you to make. And if you do that, then you can follow me and you can experience the life you crave. At this, the man's face fell, and he went away sad, for he had many possessions. He went away depressed, sad, burdened to the same frustrating life, even though he had everything this world says you need, to the same sad, depressed, and frustrating life, because he was unwilling to say no to self, make the sacrifice that God asked, to follow Jesus onto the path of true life. It is always true. Saying yes to self and saying no to sacrifice is the way to forfeit the life that in your heart of hearts you long for. So one might ask, all right, this life I long for, what characterizes it? I mean, Dave, help me to kind of fill in some blanks here. So I want to give you, as we wrap things up, 3 quick things to expect if you're following Jesus and you're experiencing this life that is really life. The first is this: you encounter Jesus. You encounter his presence and his power in profound and life-changing ways. Back a couple of summers ago, my oldest son and my youngest daughter, Josh and Lindsay, set off on a quest they called the Great 48. It was an effort to break the world record at hitting the highest point of all 48 contiguous states. The record was 23 days and 16 hours. We began at the top of Mount Rainier in the state of Washington. We ended at the top of Mount Katahdin, where that picture was taken, in the state of Maine. And they set a world record by doing it in 19 days and 7 hours. And we drove 14,000 miles in those 19 days to make that record happen. Now, something cool transpired. As they were making their way up Mount Katahdin in Maine, which is the end of the Appalachian Trail, when we got there, there were TV news crews and film crews that were waiting, and we thought, we have made it big time. And then found out they weren't there for us. Because as it turns out, on that very same day, in that very same spot, an ultra running legend by the name of Scott Jurek was completing his quest to set the world record for the quickest travel on the Appalachian Trail, the beginning in Georgia, the end in Maine. He broke the world record by about 3 hours, and they were there to film it. And it just so happened on the way down, Scott and Josh and Lindsay met. And they talked about their ventures in both setting world records in the same spot on the same day. And then he invited them to, sit down in the stream and put some cold water on their weary legs and to celebrate. And they had a blast spending time with an ultra running legend. 7-time winner of the hardest ultra race in the world, named as one of the 10 fittest men on the planet. And they got to spend time with them. It was like, wow. I guess if you're going to run into Scott Jurek and you're going to have a chance to celebrate a world record with him, then you know what? You need to be doing the kind of thing he does. You need to be out there on the trail. And being in that spot because of doing what they were doing is what caused them to have the meeting, which was just so cool and capped their great venture. Did you know something similar happens with us and Jesus? See, if we'll decide that we're going to go out there and we're going to do something risky and dangerous, we're going to follow him into his mission in the world, that when we're there on the front lines with Jesus, that's where he is. That's where he's working. That's where he's spending his energy. And when we put ourselves where he is going to be, we will encounter and experience him in profound and powerful ways that will change your life. It's what Jesus meant when he said these words: whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, my servant will also be. And my Father will honor the one who serves me. When you follow Jesus into his mission in the world, Jesus will stop being an abstract idea. Christianity will no longer simply be a philosophy. It's not about a creed or a value system. It is a living being that wants you to experience his reality and power. And if Christianity is getting a little old and dusty for you, it might just be you need to redouble your effort to follow Jesus and experience him in a new, fresh, and powerful way. That's the kind of thing that happens in a life that's truly life. The second characteristic is you impact people. mean, you impact people. I read not long ago in a book called The Insanity of God about a man whose name was Pastor Dimitri. It was a fictitious name because he was still being protected. Here's his story. In a desire to help his two young boys while he lived in Soviet Russia, in order to teach them, he began to open up the scriptures and help them understand the ways of God. It so began to change the life of his boys that family members noticed and they wanted to get on what he was doing. And even though they did very careful screening, it's only family and friends they knew really well, he ended up with about 150 people that would come to his house to learn the Bible, and he became their pastor. The KGB found out about it. They raided his home and dragged him to a prison 1,000 miles from where he lived, where he was housed with 1,500 of the worst criminals in all of the former Soviet Union. He was not just ridiculed, he was beaten daily. And he was told if he would sign a letter renouncing Jesus and admitting he was a spy for the West, they would let him go. He would do neither because he wasn't the one and he was the other. The guard who would feed him in the morning would bring him his one daily meal, a piece of toast. Before giving it to him, he would defecate on it and give him the piece of toast. The other prisoners ridiculed him as well, and the only way he made it through was a ritual he had. Whenever he would find a little scrap of paper or a piece of cloth, he would take a pencil that he had hidden, and he would take whatever Bible he could remember, and he would write it on that, and then he would stick it in the window of his cell that faced east as an offering to God, and then he would sing what he called his heart song. It was a song of praise to Jesus and of the life and freedom found in him. And the prisoners hated it. They hated it. So much so that they would throw their own feces at him to get him to stop. This happened virtually every day for 17 years. Finally, the guards, apparently tired of playing with him, decided on one occasion it was time to end this miserable man's life. So they went to his prison cell after he got done singing his heart song. They beat him again, and they began to drag him through the prison hallway to his execution. And as they were dragging him through the hallway, the most amazing thing happened. The entire prison fell silent. And the guard stopped. And then, as though orchestrated by a conductor, all 1,500 of those prisoners began singing word for word the heart song Dimitri sang every morning before he was beaten. The guards were terrified. They looked at Pastor Dimitri and they said, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am a child of the living God, Jesus Christ." They took him back to his cell. They were afraid to lay a hand on him. 2 days later, they set him free. I wonder if for 17 years he wondered whether or not following Jesus had any impact on anybody at all. But in that moment, he realized that as a follower of Jesus, making a sacrifice, God was using him to change the lives and destinies of countless of the most hardened prisoners in the world. And so it is, if you and I will follow Jesus, something happens in us and through us that impacts the people around us. That's what you can count on happening if you're living a life that is truly a life. And lastly, you experience peace. By peace, I mean what the old Hebrews in the Hebrew Bible called the shalom. It was an overall sense of well-being, that all is right with you and all is right with God, and everything's going to turn out well because of the God you're connected to. It is this shalom, this peace, that caused Paul and Silas to sing in prison after being improperly beaten and put in shackles. Because this kind of peace isn't based on circumstance. It's based on a relationship with God that is so real and deep, it sustains you through everything. It's what Paul meant when he said, then you will experience God's peace, which exceeds anything we can understand. It is shalom, and it will guard you and keep you no matter what's going on in your life. This is the life Jesus was talking about. A life where you encounter Jesus and you impact people and you experience peace, shalom. I'm at rest. I'm satisfied. It is right within me and will be right someday in all the world. This is what I've tried to say this morning. Following Jesus requires self-denial and personal sacrifice. But this leads to true life. The life we crave, a life where we encounter Jesus, a life where we impact people, a life where we experience peace. So before we leave, I just have some questions to ask you. What road are you really traveling? People, come on, really. What road are you really traveling? And is it one leading to life or loss? Where do you need to practice self-denial? If you want to travel the narrow road that Jesus rode, you want to follow him, where do you need to practice self-denial? Where is that one thing in your life right now you know you've got to start saying no to say yes to what God wants? What sacrifice has God asked you to make that you just need to start making? Because here's what I suspect. That the Spirit of Jesus is so tenderly and lovingly working inside of you, saying, follow me. Follow me. I know it's hard, but it's the path to life. And he's saying, here's where you need to say no. Here's a sacrifice you need to make. This morning, say no. Make the sacrifice. Follow. As I pray, would you make that determination before God and make that commitment this very morning? Father, thank you for the opportunities of the day. Thank you for the honesty of Jesus. Thank you for the power of Jesus, who alone is the way, the truth, and is life. Father, would you help each one of us in this room to believe on him, to put our hope in him, and then to follow, to respond to his Spirit when his Spirit moves us to imitate his example and obey his commands and live out his values. Grace us with the capacity to just say no to ourselves, to say yes to sacrifice, that we might experience the life that Jesus longs to give us and that we, in our heart of hearts, desperately crave. Bless every choice made before you this morning. May we experience fuller life from this moment moving forward, I ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, if there's a question that you have because of our conversation today, I'm going to be right down over here, and I would love the opportunity to interact with you. If not, I hope you have a fantastic day following Jesus. All right. God bless you. You are dismissed.